Here we have a picture of a basket of fruit sitting on the table, sitting on the earth, not to scale. Draw a free body diagram for each object using agent-object notation. Indicate which forces are the same third law pair. First of all, we should be able to recognize that if these objects are just sitting still, none of them are changing speed or direction. That does not necessarily mean that there are no forces acting on them, but it does mean that the total force on each object adds up to 0. The instructions want us to use agent-object notation. This means every force will be described with a sentence containing 2 nouns and a verb. A force pair consists of 2 sentences. The second sentence uses the same words in the opposite order. A free body diagram is always drawn for objects, never for agents. If I draw a force on this dot labeled noun 1, verb noun 2, that implies that the dot represents noun 2. Let's start with easy things. The fruit basket is feeling some forces. The earth is pulling the fruit basket down, and the table is holding the fruit basket up. In my notation, I'm abbreviating the nouns with just a single letter to save space on my screen, but when you do this, you should write out the words fully. If the table is pushing the fruit up, that means the fruit is pushing the table down. This is a third law pair. These 2 forces are the same size and in opposite direction. In the sentence, fruit pushes table, table is the object. Therefore, that force gets drawn on the table. The forces on the fruit are balanced, meaning it won't change speed or direction. That's good. The table is also being pulled down by the earth. I can draw that force on the table. At this point, the table has 2 forces acting downward on it. If that is all there was, the table would change its speed. We know the table is stationary. There must be an upward force on the table, and it must be big enough to cancel out both the other forces on the table. This force is the earth pushing up on the table. If the earth is pushing up on the table, then the table is also pushing down on the earth. The free body diagram for the earth is currently unbalanced. We need some upward force to keep the earth from changing its speed. We have some unfinished force pairs that could help us out. The earth is pulling the fruit down. The third law pair to that is the fruit pulls the earth up. That sounds weird, but it's absolutely correct. That force would get drawn on the earth. We now have 2 forces on the earth, but they don't quite cancel out. The last pair will fix this for us. We said that the earth is pulling the table down. The third law partner for that force is table pulls earth up. Once we draw that force on the earth, we are all set. There are some important things to recognize about these pictures. The forces in each individual picture cancel out, meaning that none of the objects will change their speed or direction. All of the force pairs are drawn in the same colors. Note that there are exactly 2 vectors in each color, and that any given free body diagram has a maximum number of 1 vector in any given color. That's another way of saying both forces in a pair can't act on the same object. Free body diagrams are drawn for objects. Notice that the first diagram represents the fruit as an object, and the fruit is the object in each of the agent-object sentences labeling that diagram. Similarly, the middle free body diagram is for the table, and all of the forces acting on it end with the word table. The same thing is happening with the earth. In the picture of the fruit, it looks like we have 2 forces which are the same magnitude but opposite direction. You might be tempted to think that this is a third law pair. It is not. A third law pair must consist of only 2 nouns and a single verb. The agent-object sentences on the fruit free body diagram have 3 nouns and 2 verbs. They are not a third law pair. If we wanted to, we could draw the free body diagrams from this scenario differently. Instead of labeling the vectors with agent-object notation like it asks, we could instead label the forces with formal force symbols. The fruit would feel a weight due to the earth and support from the table. The table would feel weight from the earth, and it would feel compressed by the fruit. It would also feel support from the floor. The upward forces on the earth are due to gravity, and the downward force on the earth is caused by the contact with the table. When you're solving problems on your own, pay attention to the instructions. In some cases, you are asked to use agent-object notation. In other cases, you are asked to use formal force symbols.